The story unfolds within the grand castle of the demon king named Gura Huduru, where he warmly welcomes the hero of that era, a young girl named Renee. She, the one who had finally reached his castle, was deserving of his utmost respect. The demon king introduced himself as Guma Huduru, the chief of the demon army. He announced his intention to reward her for her remarkable achievement by sending her to a world where her friends and family already resided. The hero, whose name was Renee, sadly confessed that she had no friends or family, and she had come alone to his place. Huduru began to laugh at her, assuming she was simply scared and making excuses. But in truth, she was overwhelmed with sorrow. She began to explain that she was without family because they had been slain by villagers. The demons had targeted her village because of her, leading the villagers to blame her for the attacks. She feared that if she couldn't defeat the demon king, they would see it as a betrayal. She shared that she had worked tirelessly to be a good hero, but deep down, she knew it would be too difficult for her. Fighting the demon king was something she never desired, as she never wanted to become a hero in the first place. Exhaustion weighed heavily on her as she expressed her inner turmoil. Suddenly, tears streamed down her face as she confided in Huduru, expressing her desire for him to end her life. She longed to reunite with her parents in the afterlife, uncertain whether they would forgive her for the events that had transpired. Hearing Renee's heartbreaking story, Huduru felt his heart soften. Fighting back his own tears, he tried to comfort her, reminding her that there were many things to experience and accomplish in life. He suggested they share some drinks together, hoping to lift her spirits. However, Renee remained inconsolable, continuing to cry and sob. The scene shifted to a quiet room where Renee lay sleeping, and Huduru sat beside her bed. There, he opened up about his decision to look after her, feeling conflicted as the demon king. He questioned whether it was right for him, as a demon, to help a hero, uncertain of the consequences of his actions. As Renee began to awaken and surveyed the room, she couldn't help but wonder if she had entered heaven. Huduru, noticing her stirring, gently inquired if she had slept well. Startled to see him there, Renee was shocked, wondering if he too had passed away. Huduru reassured her that he wasn't deceased. They were in a room within his castle. He explained that she had cried herself to sleep, so he had carried her to the room. However, Renee was too absorbed in the comfort of her surroundings to hear him. Overwhelmed with happiness, she believed she had found herself in a heavenly place. Huduru grew frustrated and demanded to know if she was even listening to him. He then asked for her name, to which she replied, Renee. With intentions to share something important, Huduru began speaking. But Renee remained silent, lost in her own thoughts for a while. Huduru inquired about what was troubling her, and Renee suddenly brightened up, expressing joy over being called by her name after such a long time. She explained how much it meant to her. Then, Huduru shared with Renee that from that moment forward, she would live in his castle. The scene shifted to a room where Huduru and Renee stood together. Renee, upon seeing the room, was stunned by its beauty, her eyes filled with amazement. Huduru asked her if she liked the room, to which she responded that it was incredibly luxurious. Huduru then shared that from that day forward, she would live in that room, free to decorate it however she pleased. Renee was shocked and amazed, unable to believe what she was hearing. She asked incredulously if he was truly asking her to live in the room. Huduru then began to explain that he had a strong interest in magic and dedicated much of his time to studying it within the castle. However, he found it inconvenient to study alone. This led him to consider finding an assistant to help him with his magical endeavors. Huduru then asked Renee if she would like to be his assistant and help him with his magical research. However, Renee stood there silently, not responding. Concerned, Huduru waved his hands in front of her and gently shook her, but she remained unresponsive. There he realized that she had fainted, so he carefully lifted her into his arms and gently carried her to the bed, ensuring she was comfortable before letting her rest. Once she was sleeping peacefully, he took a seat beside her on a chair and began reading a book, keeping a watchful eye over her as she rested. The next day, they both set off for a place within the castle. Huduru suggested they visit the inner parts of the castle, and Renee agreed. As they walked, Huduru couldn't help but ponder over his decision to ask Renee to be his assistant. His primary concern was how he would explain this to the other demons. He mulled over the seemingly impossible task of convincing the other demons, contemplating the potential consequences if the situation escalated. Suddenly his thoughts were interrupted as he noticed two other demons approaching, Captain Bonds and the Devil Steward Croel. They greeted Huduru with a cheerful "good morning" before their eyes landed on Renee. Renee, feeling scared, instinctively hid behind Huduru, who also went into a defensive stance. To their surprise, Bondes showed great delight upon seeing her and asked if she was the rumored hero. Hearing Bondes's question, Huduru felt confused. Bondes and Croel then greeted Renee warmly and introduced themselves to her. Renee, still in a state of shock, returned the greeting and introduced herself as well. Huduru then inquired if they both knew about Renee's background. Bondes replied that they had heard about her from the barman, and the story had spread throughout the castle. Bondes then shared that upon learning about Renee's difficult past, both he and Croel were moved to tears. They sympathized with her, recognizing the hardships she had endured despite her young age. Bondes then turned to Huduru and asked if Renee was going to live in the castle. Huduru affirmed with a yes, confirming his intentions to let her stay. Bondes and Croel expressed their agreement with the plan, indicating their support for Renee's presence in the castle. Bondes reassured Renee, telling her that she could rely on him if she ever found herself in trouble. Grateful for his offer, Renee thanked Bondes sincerely. Observing the interaction, Huduru felt reassured, believing that everything would work out fine. Croel approached Renee and complimented her on her cuteness, offering to answer any questions she might have and to teach her. Witnessing this, Huduru realized that not everything would be resolved smoothly, and already regretted about what he said. Huduru then asked both Bondes and Croel if it was their first time meeting Renee. In truth, Huduru had expected Bondes to confront Renee face-to-face when she came to attack, but he hadn't done so. Bondes hesitated before answering, but eventually he shared that when Renee came to attack their castle, the gatekeepers had informed everyone. They discussed the number of enemies, but the gatekeeper revealed that only one person was approaching to attack them. The main issue was that Renee was surrounded by an extraordinary aura, leading them to suspect that she might be a hero. In light of this, they decided to inform the commanding officer about the situation for further action. Before they could take any further action, both became frightened upon seeing Renee. She appeared mysterious, with an intense and unsettling look in her eyes. She shouted that she didn't want to fight, but felt compelled to do so in order to meet their expectations. Everyone present there grew fearful of Renee's intense gaze and determined demeanor. Realizing that the commanding officer might not be equipped to handle the situation, they ultimately decided to inform Huduru. So in reality, this was the underlying reason why none of them had approached Renee until they had heard the rumors about her. Upon hearing this revelation, both Huduru and Renee began to feel a sense of unease and strangeness settle over them. After some time, the scene shifts back to when the tour of the castle had ended. Huduru informed Renee that their tour had come to an end and asked if there was anything else she wanted to know or discuss. Renee seemed hesitant to speak, so Huduru reassured her not to hold back, reminding her that she would be his assistant starting the next day. Encouraged by his words, Renee's expression brightened, and she asked him where she could find a clock. Huduru, upon hearing that Renee needed a clock for her daily routine, considered it would be best to provide one for her in her room. He decided that he would arrange to have a clock brought to her room if she needed it for her daily activities. Renee then explained that she needed the clock because, according to state orders, she was required to train herself for at least 10 hours daily. The next day in the castle, Bondes noticed that the wall clock was missing from its usual place. He asked Croel where the clock had gone. Croel explained that Lord Huduru had destroyed all the clocks in the castle. It turned out that Huduru had taken this action after hearing about Renee's need for a clock. On the other hand, Huduru was explaining to Renee that from that moment onward, she would assist him in his research. However, he pointed out that it might be difficult for her to do so while wearing armor. He called out for Liesel repeatedly until she appeared after a minute. After Liesel arrived, she apologized for her late arrival, expressing regret that Huduru had to wait for her. She then inquired about the reason for Huduru calling her. Huduru confirmed and introduced Liesel to Renee, explaining that Liesel was in charge of managing the castle. Therefore, if Renee had any concerns regarding her life in the castle, she could approach Liesel for assistance. Huduru introduced Renee to Liesel, informing her that Renee would be his assistant from that day forward. Renee and Liesel then exchanged greetings. Liesel mentioned that she had heard about Renee from Bonds and others. Understanding that Renee had experienced a lot of pain, she then gently patted Renee's head as a gesture of comfort and support. At that moment, Renee felt a little shy upon hearing Liesel's words. Huduru then instructed Liesel to prepare a change of clothes for Renee, suggesting that she could use spare clothes from the maids. However, Liesel denied the request, explaining that there were no maid clothes that would fit Renee properly. Huduru took notice of Renee's small size and decided to take matters into his own hands. He resolved to make a dress for Renee himself. With determination, he began crafting a dress for her to wear. After some time and careful stitching, the dress was completed. After trying on the dress, Renee was stunned by her own reflection. Liesel praised Huru for his craftsmanship, but Renee felt shy and self-conscious. She covered her eyes with her hands and asked both of them not to look at her, feeling unworthy of wearing such an amazing dress. Hearing Renee's self-doubt, Liesel's protective instincts kicked in, and she requested that Huru allow Renee to join her maid corps. However, Huru denied the request outright. Once again, Renee stood before the mirror and called out to Huru. Curious, Huru asked her why she had summoned him. Renee shared her lingering doubts, confessing that she still felt unworthy of wearing such an amazing dress. Huru responded, telling her that, in his opinion, it would be difficult for her to conduct magic research while wearing armor. He also asked her if it wasn't essential to have clothes that were suitable for work. Renee responded, expressing her concern that she might get dirty while working in it. Huru shared that he didn't mind if she got dirty while working because it was her work clothes. Still, Renee wasn't satisfied and made a weird face in front of Huru. So in the end, Huru agreed to make a new dress. He mentioned that he had made a dress for her with leftover fabric last time, and now it was time for him to use that fabric for her new working dress. Therefore, he created a new dress for her, which was even more good-looking and amazing than the last one. Seeing it, Renee was shocked and started shivering. In her shivering state, she responded that she was okay with the clothes she was already wearing and didn't need any other clothing. Huru agreed with her choice as well. The scene then shifted to some time later as they arrived at the castle archives, the great underground library. Huru shared with Renee that all the necessary materials and magical tomes for her research could be found there. He also mentioned that he would prepare everything they needed and have it brought to the research room. Then, Huru asked Renee if she could read. Renee responded affirmatively, recalling how she had taught to read and write when she was little. Hearing this, Huru felt relieved, thinking that things would be simpler since Renee could read the books while he gathered the materials. However, Renee was shocked and shared that all those books were amazing, so she possibly couldn't read them. Huru began to explain that sorcery was a miracle born from the fusion of science and magical power. He emphasized that for Renee's research, it was essential to possess knowledge from numerous domains. Since she was his assistant and would be engaging herself in sorcery, she must start with her education. Then Huru gave Renee several books, assuring her that they would be fine for starting. Despite Renee's desire to say something, Huru didn't listen and asked her to read carefully. Renee fell silent at that moment. After some time, Huru collected all the materials and books, but he was running towards the research room as he had gotten too late in searching and collecting the books. When he entered the room, he apologized for being late and coming back, but he noticed that Renee was so focused on her studies that she didn't look up at him. So he silently sat at a place and started reading the books. After some time, he called out to Renee with a loud voice, informing her that it was time for their supper. Days passed like this. One morning, Huru woke up and started thinking that it had been 7 days since Renee arrived at the castle. However, he noticed that she still seemed conflicted about living in the demon castle despite being a hero. As he thought about her, he suddenly saw Renee coming from outside. Confused, he asked her if she had been outside and what the reason was for her going out. Renee first greeted Huru with a good morning, and then responded that she had gone to the nearby river to take a bath. Hearing this, Huru was shocked, so he shouted, asking her to confirm if she had indeed taken a bath again. She nodded in response, confirming that she had indeed taken a bath. Huru was deeply shocked and started wondering if he hadn't told her the location of the bathroom. However, he soon remembered that he had informed her about the bathroom, realizing that she must not have understood that the bathroom was specially prepared for her. Huru then asked if it was possible that since the day she arrived, she had been going outside the castle daily to take a bath. Renee responded with a yes, confirming that she did indeed go there every day. This word stabbed Huru like a sword. She also shared that the water around the castle was really cold, but it was okay because despite the cold water, she would make sure to bathe herself properly daily, if her room or her clothes got dirty. Huru then checked Renee's temperature by touching her forehead, and felt that her temperature was cold as ice, causing him to panic. Seeing his reaction, Renee was about to ask about it, but before she could, Huru took out a piece of cloth and wrapped it around her. He then gently lifted her into his hands and hurried towards the bathroom. Upon reaching the gate, he shouted to all the troops, instructing them to prepare hot water for Renee's bath. After 10 minutes, the hot water was ready, spurred into action by Huru's urgent request. All the troops diligently worked to prepare the hot water for the bath. Now Huru faced the problem of figuring out how to take her to the bath. As Renee was still like a child, Huru worried that if she entered the bath alone, she might not know what to do. He wanted the maids to escort her, but they were all busy with morning chores. Suddenly Croel arrived and asked if he was in trouble. Huru, shocked, asked how Sir Croel had arrived there. Croel explained that she had heard about his dilemma regarding accompanying Renee to the bath. She then requested Huru to trust her with that humble duty. Huru began to consider that as Renee was a girl at a delicate age, he couldn't go with her himself. However, he realized that the sooner they got her to the bath, the better it would be for her health. Therefore, for Renee's well-being, he agreed to let Croel accompany her to the bath. Hearing this, Croel became happy and started to hurry towards Renee, but Huru stopped her. He asked her to come in her original form as she couldn't go towards Renee in that form. Suddenly, Croel transformed into a beautiful succubus girl. Seeing this transformation, Renee was stunned as she had always thought Sir Croel was a boy. Croel laughed at her reaction, explaining that it was common misconception because most of the time she was in her beast form. She then reassured Renee and asked if it was okay. Huru responded with a yes. Croel became happy and shared that they both would surely enjoy the bath, and she would make sure Renee enjoyed it as much as possible. Huru then asked Croel to lend her hand to him. She then gave her hand to him, and Huru performed some type of magic on her hand. Suddenly she noticed a design on her hand and asked Huru about it. He shared that he had casted a spell on her, so that if she touched Renee with false intentions, she would feel immense pain in her body. Hearing this, she was fully shocked. They both then went to the bathroom, where Croel showed Renee the bathroom design. Renee was amazed by the bathroom but also felt scared. Croel then asked Renee to go into the bathroom to take the bath as soon as possible, but Renee refused, saying that a bucket of warm water would be okay for her. Croel then went towards the bath and checked the temperature of the water. She reassured Renee that she would be okay if she took a bath wearing the towel. Then she asked Renee to excuse her for a moment, during which she tied her chest with her tail and gently pulled her into the bath. As they entered the bath, Croel seemed to be enjoying the experience, despite being a demon, whereas Renee wasn't very happy. She asked Croel why she had done it. Croel responded that if Renee didn't bathe properly, she would get scolded by Lord Huru. Croel then pretended to cry and asked what the bonds and others would think if they heard that she was fine with just a bucket of water. She expressed that they would all be sad because they had worked so hard to prepare the hot water. So, Renee got ready to take the bath, and after that, they both started talking. Croel asked Renee if she was getting used to living in the castle after being there for 7 days, and if there was anything she didn't understand since her big sis was there to teach her. Renee became very sad and shared that there was one thing she didn't understand. She asked if it was okay for her to stay in the castle despite being a hero. Ah, I see. Croel had been wanting to hear that question for a long time. Now, as Renee asked it, Croel understood that Renee might not comprehend why they, the demon army, were protecting her, considering it was a demon army castle. Croel then confirmed with Renee by asking if Lord Huru had invited her to be his assistant. Renee responded that even though she was his assistant, she hadn't done anything for him yet. Croel thought to herself that the overprotectiveness of Lord Huru sometimes backfired on them. Renee shared that everyone in the castle was so nice to her, and she kept receiving so much from them, but she couldn't return anything in return. Croel asked her what she wanted to do, if she wanted to stay at the castle. Renee was confused about what she wanted to do. Croel sensed that Renee wasn't trying to think about it deeply, as she seemed to be holding back her true thoughts. So Croel decided to ask Renee about the castle and everything related to it. Especially what she thinks about Lord Huru, Bondes, Liesel. Renee responded that Huru and everyone else in the castle were very kind, and when they were all together, her heart felt warm and full, to the point where she didn't know what to do with all the emotions. Croel felt happy that Renee had finally opened up, and she shared that she was very happy because it meant that Renee didn't hate them. Hearing this, Renee shared that there was no way she could hate them. They had been nothing but kind to her. Croel then asked if Renee thought it was okay for her to be in the castle, considering that Lord Huru believed she was needed there, and everyone else was in favor of it. Croel reassured Renee that she didn't need to worry about anything, because if something happened, Lord Huru would take care of it. Then, Croel hugged Renee and shared that if Renee left, her big sister would be alone. Croel then shared that she thought their bodies were warmed up now, so she was going to shampoo Renee's hair. Renee told her that she could do it herself, but Croel suddenly pulled her up, saying she didn't need to be so reserved. When Croel pulled Renee up quickly, Renee's towel fell down, and Renee felt very shy. Croel shouted that it was so adorable, but suddenly she remembered the spell. However, it was too late, and she was hit by an attack of immense pain. There, Croel shouted in immense pain, Suddenly, upon hearing her shout, Huduru rushed there and took Renee into his hands, sharing that if Croel ever tried to lay a hand on her again, he would make her blind. Renee then calmed down Huduru, reassuring him that it wasn't Croel's fault, as she had only seen Renee in an embarrassing situation. Meanwhile, Croel was still amazed by Renee's chest. After some time, Croel was taking Renee to the changing room. There, Croel explained that the changing rooms were separated by gender and asked Renee to take care not to go into the wrong one. Near the sink, Croel noticed a forgotten bottle. Upon closer inspection, she saw that it was a hair growth reagent. She began to wonder who could have left it there, but when she saw Bondas's name on it, everything became clear. They both were shocked. Croel got a little confused, but soon she convinced herself that Bondas didn't need the hair growth reagent because it would be quite strange if a skeleton started growing hair. Nonetheless, she couldn't help but imagine the scene if Bondas did indeed grow hair. Feeling disgusted by the thought, Croel felt bad about it, and decided to exchange the hair growth reagent with some hair removal solution instead. Hearing this, Renee was shocked and wondered what Croel was thinking of doing. After a few more days had passed, when Huduru and Renee were in the library. Renee sat quietly, but seemed a bit uncomfortable. Suddenly she stood up and shouted that she couldn't take it anymore, and asked Huduru to let her do some work. Huduru wasn't expecting that from Renee. Still, he asked her whether she didn't believe that acquiring knowledge was also a job. Renee responded that he was right, but still, reading all day wasn't right. So she asked him to let her take care of her own things. She was saying all that because everything was done for her by someone else. Even her room and clothes were cleaned by someone else. Renee was literally shivering as she shared that day after day. She felt guilty for relying on others. Huduru started thinking that he had been too overprotective, and if his care had caused her trouble, then he really had messed up. He then assured her that he would think of something, and so he called out the name Rizeru. Out of nowhere, Rizeru appeared in the middle of the room. Rizeru asked the reason for being called there. Huduru told her that he had a request for her. Renee was going to help the maids with their work for today. Therefore, Renee and Rizeru greeted each other with a good morning. Renee asked Rizeru not to call her ma'am, as she wasn't. Meanwhile, Huduru gave instructions to Rizeru to avoid any work involving fire or sharp objects, suggesting something easy like folding laundry would be best. While Huduru was giving instructions, Rizeru opened the wrapper of a toffee and put it in Renee's mouth. Renee, after eating the toffee, felt amazed by its sweetness. Rizeru was very happy to see her reaction, so Huduru confirmed whether she had listened to his instructions or not. Rizeru responded with a yes, confirming that she had heard everything and would take special care of Renee. Sensing something off, Huduru decided to go with them as well. In the next scene, they were walking to the courtyard. Huduru told Renee that she would start helping with the laundry department. Upon reaching the courtyard, she got stunned seeing it. Huduru asked if it was her first time seeing the courtyard. Rizeru mentioned that the head maid Eru would be arriving soon. Suddenly someone was coming, shouting Huduru and Rizeru's names. It was none other than the maid, Eru. She arrived there and asked the reason for their presence. Huduru apologized for disrupting their work and asked if it was a good time to talk. Eru responded with a yes. Huduru then explained everything to her. Hearing this, she became very happy, expressing her excitement at being able to meet Renee, the person who was the subject of rumors lately. Then both Renee and Eru introduced themselves to each other, and it turned out that Eru was the head maid of the laundry department. Hearing this, Renee asked if it was Eru who washed her clothes every day. Eru responded happily with a yes, confirming that she was indeed the one who washed them. But to everyone's shock, Renee started bowing her head in front of Eru, thanking her for doing so and apologizing for letting her do that. It seemed like Renee was feeling ashamed for having someone else do that work for her. Seeing this, Eru's desire to protect her only increased. Eru became emotional and hugged Renee, then she asked Huduru if Renee could join her department. However, Huduru directly denied the request. Rizeru intervened, telling Eru that she was being selfish at the moment. Additionally, Rizeru shared that Renee would be coming with her. Upon hearing this, Huduru wondered what she was talking about. Suddenly, someone shouted that Renee was here. Everyone turned to look towards the voice to identify the person. Seeing a girl, Huduru got a little shocked and asked, "Mari?" Suddenly, a girl in the scene came shouting that she had finally found Renee, and she ran towards her to hug her. The girl was very happy to meet Renee, expressing how cute Renee was according to her. The rumors didn't lie. 2 more maids were there talking about Renee, with one expressing disbelief while the other clarified the situation. Huduru then asked the reason why everyone was there. The first girl shared that everyone's work was finished, so they came to invite Eru for lunch, but she had seen them. She then started getting angry at Huru, questioning why he was so cruel to them, why he didn't introduce Renee to them, and why he was avoiding it. It seemed like Huru was intentionally avoiding the introduction for a while. Huru found himself in a position where he didn't have any reply for that, so he finally asked Rizeru to introduce everyone to Renee. So she did next. Rizeru shared that the first girl's name was Mari. She was the head maid of the cooking department. The second girl's name was Mina. She was the head maid of the security department. And the last girl's name was Tika. She was the head maid of the cleaning department. Renee greeted everyone and was about to introduce herself, but before she could, Mari hugged her again and shared that they already knew who she was. They were just waiting to meet her. Another maid also came close to Renee, expressing that Mari was being selfish as she was meeting Renee alone. They all started patting Renee and meeting her happily, surrounding her from every direction. Huru also became uncomfortable seeing that. There, Renee asked for help from Huru as she got stuck between them. There was just too much caressing for her. Hearing Renee's request for help, Huru became emotional as it was the first time she had asked for his help, especially since she had already given up on life when she arrived there. Eru also asked Huru to go and help Renee somehow. Huru then takes Renee out from between them. Eru then asks about the things he was going to say her in the beginning. Huru also remembers that he came for work. Huru shared that he wanted Renee to help the maids with their work, so he wanted Eru to allow her to assist with the laundry. Renee was too afraid to speak in front of them. Hearing Huru's request, the maids couldn't believe it at first. Mari also asked if Renee was going to join the maid unit. Huru responded with a no, explaining that she was only going to join them for one day. The maids became happy, and Mari expressed her joy, stating that she would make the best use of the opportunity. Huru felt tense and asked what she meant by that. Mari explained that they weren't just sitting around the whole time. She had already prepared for this moment in advance by making a maid outfit for Renee. She then made Renee wear the outfit and started getting happy, commenting that Renee looked cute in it, and the dress fit her perfectly. However, Renee wasn't happy as the dress was short and her legs were visible, causing her to push the clothes downwards in shame to hide them. Huru noticed Renee's discomfort and quickly created a new, bigger dress for her. This time, the dress was perfect, and Renee was confused about what was going on. Huru felt relieved after creating the dress and gently patted Renee's head, almost like a father figure. The maids interpreted Huru's actions as him acting like a parent figure towards Renee. In the laundry room, Eru asked Renee if she really wanted to do some work in the castle. Renee responded with a yes, expressing her desire to take on some tasks. She explained that she had asked Huru to assign her a job. Mari wasn't okay with the fact that Renee was only there for one day. Huru responded that each department would take turns showing Renee how to work as a maid, likening it to a workplace tour. Here, Eru was thinking that despite Huru's explanation, he remained very overprotective. Renee then called out to Eru, who was lost in deep thought. Eru apologized, admitting she had spaced out for a bit. Renee responded with an okay, and asked what she should do next. Eru grew tense as she pondered the next task, knowing Renee had completed her previous assignment swiftly. She began to share that her next task involved taking in the sheets, which would take some time. However, before Eru could finish speaking, Renee dashed towards the sheets, eager to start her work. Eru shouted for Renee to wait, reassuring her that there was no need to rush as she could take her time. However, Renee responded that she was okay. Eru then asked Renee the reason for her eagerness to do the work. Renee stopped in her tracks and began to express that she didn't do anything in the castle. Everything had been given to her, and she didn't like the way things were, but she didn't know what to do about it. Additionally, she shared that no matter what she did, it never seemed to be enough, and she felt like she was just getting in the way. Feeling very sad, Renee spoke in a pleading manner, expressing her desire to repay all the kindness everyone showed her. Seeing this, Eru understood why Huru tried so hard to protect Renee. She was such an adorable and good-hearted girl. Overwhelmed with happiness, Eru went and hugged Renee from behind, causing Renee to get scared. The scene then shifted to later, where Renee was with Mina. Mina informed her that it was the security team's turn. Renee responded with a yes, expressing her eagerness to work with her. Mina patted Renee's head affectionately and shared that she was also looking forward to working with her. She then began to explain the security team's job, which, as the name implies, was to guard the castle. Their duty involved patrolling the castle to ensure everything was normal. Additionally, if they encountered an intruder, it was their responsibility to confront and fight them off. Hearing the word intruder, Renee became scared and panicked, fearing she might be attacked. Witnessing her distress, Mina asked if she was okay. Suddenly, Croel appeared and asked if Mina could hear her. Out of nowhere, the barrier reacted, and Mina understood that something may be approaching the castle. Excited, Mina realized it was the perfect opportunity to demonstrate to Renee. She quickly started running and asked Renee to follow her. Confused, Renee asked what was happening as she followed Mina. When they got outside, Renee tensed up upon seeing a dragon. Mina explained that it was a type of dragon called a wyvern. Sometimes they wandered near the castle. This particular one was a young dragon that didn't realize the castle was off limits and was trying to establish a territory for itself. Mina then took her weapon and shared that it had been a while since the security team had any action. She asked Renee to stand back and just watch, emphasizing that it could be dangerous for her to come close during the fight. She shouted at Renee to get down again, but Renee wanted to say something. However, Mina urged her to hurry up as it seemed like the dragon had noticed them. Both the dragon and Mina were about to attack each other, when suddenly someone snapped his fingers. The atmosphere suddenly turned dark, causing Mina to become slightly confused. The sun disappeared from the sky, and silence filled all surroundings. Waves began to ripple out from the water, and Renee, feeling scared, asked Mina the reason for the sudden change in atmosphere. Mina was about to share, but before she could, Renee noticed something emerging and became puzzled. It was a large dragon, much bigger than the castle itself. Witnessing the immense size of the dragon, the smaller wyvern became frightened and flew off from the scene. Mina was shocked that the wyvern had fled from the scene. As the atmosphere returned to normal, Renee pondered why the atmosphere had changed and how such a massive dragon had appeared. As Mina searched around, trying to understand what had happened, she suddenly spotted Huru nearby. Staring at him with anger evident in her expression, Huru became tense, sensing Mina's displeasure. Mina started shouting at Huru, demanding to know why he scared away the dragon and reminding him that it was their job, not his. She was about to say something harsh, but then she remembered that Renee was also present. Quickly realizing the situation, she burst into laughter instead. She then apologized to Renee, feeling ashamed that despite being part of the defense team, it was a shameful act. However, Renee responded with a firm no, stating that it wasn't a shameful act. She expressed gratitude to Mina for keeping her safe, acknowledging that she had done her job well and even went beyond. Renee also complimented Mina, saying she looked very beautiful. Hearing her words, Mina felt shy and started playing with Renee's hair, admitting that Renee's compliments were making her blush. Meanwhile, Renee couldn't help but think about Huru's dragon form massive size. The scene shifted later on, with Renee now in the kitchen. Mari apologized to Renee for making her wait, and warmly welcomed her into the kitchen. Renee graciously thanked Mari for inviting her into the kitchen. Mari responded that it was her pleasure and praised Renee for her wild hair. She then proceeded to explain that the cooking unit's job was to prepare meals for the entire castle and manage food resources. But she began to think that Lord Huru might not allow them to use all kinds of sharp stuff, which could limit Renee's ability to help them. Despite this concern, she considered that they could still have a chat until Renee had to switch jobs. However, when Mari looked at Renee, she realized that wasn't possible, as Renee seemed very eager to get to work. Mari then thought about how she would feel guilty if she tricked Renee into just sitting around. So she asked Renee if she could help her. Renee responded with a resounding yes. Mari then opened up to Renee, admitting that she didn't have much confidence in her cooking skills. Despite always trying her best, she often felt like something was missing. Being in charge of the cooking unit made her feel like she was making everyone else look bad. That's why she wanted to cook something for Renee and asked for her honest thoughts about the dish. At first, Renee looked at Mari with a pitying expression, but soon she agreed to do whatever she could to help her. Mari then prepared a strawberry tart for Renee to taste. After finishing the dish, Mari asked Renee to taste it and provide feedback on how it tasted. Seeing the strawberry tart, Renee became tense, but Mari took a full spoon of tart and went to feed Renee. Renee tried to stop her, but before she could, Mari fed her the tart directly into her mouth. After eating the tart, Renee found it delicious and felt happy. Mari reassured her not to worry as she had made plenty of it. Renee then asked Mari if she wanted her thoughts about the tart. But it turns out that she didn't. She just wanted to feed her. Lastly, Renee arrived at the cleaning department where Tika introduced herself as the team leader. Renee greeted her back politely. Tika explained that their duty was to clean every nook and cranny of the castle, emphasizing that in keeping the castle sanitary, they also worked to keep everyone healthy. Tika also mentioned that there would be no tolerance for cutting corners, and she wouldn't be lenient with Renee like Rizeru and others. Renee responded by saying that she would put her utmost effort into the work. Tika was pleased with Renee's response. She then began instructing her that during cleaning, they should work from top to bottom. Their first task would be to clean the windows and candle holders using a cloth. Suddenly, Tika noticed that Renee was small compared to the size of the window, so she asked Renee to wipe the window as much as she could reach. Renee responded with an okay, and she began cleaning the windows diligently. Tika looked at Renee again and asked about her age, noting that she looked younger than herself. Renee responded that she was 12 years old. Tika then started shouting at her, questioning whether that was really how she should be addressing her superiors. Renee got scared and quickly bowed down in front of Tika, apologizing for her casual behavior and acknowledging that she shouldn't have been so informal. Tika reassured her and asked her to get up, explaining that it wasn't what she meant by her question. Renee then asked if Tika wanted to be addressed as Tika ma'am, but Tika denied it again. Renee apologized for the misunderstanding. Tika then asked Renee to call her Oni-chan, what meant older sister. Renee complied and said, "Tika Oni-chan." Tika became very happy upon hearing this, as she was the youngest among the maids. The scene then shifted to Huduru's room where he was deep in thought about Renee. He realized that Renee herself wanted to work, but Huduru believed that she couldn't express such simple desires on her own. He might feel a sense of relief that Renee had expressed her intent, but deep down, he knew it stemmed from her feelings of guilt. What he truly wanted was for Renee to one day openly talk about her genuine desires. But if Renee felt happier working alongside the maids, then it would be better to consider the proper way of things in Renee's castle. Huduru was taken aback as he never intended for Renee to meet the maids. Suddenly he heard the sound of many footsteps approaching him. It was all the maids, Eru, Tika, Mari, and Mina. They had come to talk to Huduru about Renee, expressing their desire for her to join the maid unit. They believed Renee was very promising, and they all wanted her. They promised to take care of her, and with more hands, they would all be more efficient. Huduru felt tense seeing the rush over the topic of Renee, as he had no complaints about the initiative, but now he had to understand the situation. Suddenly, Rizeru arrived and announced that Renee had joined the maid unit team. Shocked, Huduru asked Rizeru what she was saying, unable to believe the news. Huduru then asked if they all accepted Renee into the maid team and what they wanted her to do. Eru responded by explaining that it wasn't about wanting Renee to do something specific. Rather, they wanted to take care of her like a child. Mari expressed her desire for Renee to tell her what she thought of her cooking every day. Today it was cake, and next time it would be cookies and pudding. Mina shared that they could both go around guarding together, as she hadn't fully thought about it yet. Tika shared that she would teach Renee a lot of things, such as how to tie her hair and how to dress well for the sake of work. Renee became very tense hearing all that. Huduru then asked Renee if she was also confused, as he was confused hearing all their plans for her. The scene then shifted to later, where the maids were discussing among themselves. Mari was sharing her thoughts about Renee's cuteness, expressing that it exceeded her expectations. Eru was deep in thought, contemplating whether there was still something they could do for Renee since Lord Huduru had stopped them from recruiting her for their teams. She wondered if she visited Renee's room on her days off, would she get yelled at by Lord Huduru? Mina was lost in deep thought, prompting Mari to ask her what was bothering her, if there was something on her mind. Mina responded that she was simply thinking about something, and asked them not to worry about it. Mari persisted, confirming with Mina if everything was indeed okay with her. However, Eru interjected, posing the question of why Lord Huduru had tried to prevent them from meeting Renee for so long. The other maids expressed their confusion, as it was a great mystery to all of them. In the next scene, Renee was taking a bath with Croel. Croel was shampooing Renee's head. She asked Renee if she was feeling itchy anywhere. Renee responded with a no, indicating that she was feeling well. Croel then inquired if Renee's experience helping the maids was enjoyable. Renee shared that everyone was very kind, but she didn't get to do anything. She felt sad, realizing that even though she wanted to help, Huduru seemed concerned for her, which made her believe she was a burden to everyone. Suddenly, water fell on her head. Croel announced that she had finished washing and suggested Renee go to the bath before she got cold. Croel added that if Renee needed anything, she would be there to help. Renee became confused but kept staring at Croel. Eventually, she asked if it would be okay for her to wash Croel's body. Croel's expression turned serious as she asked Renee if she truly wanted to wash her body. Seeing Croel, Renee got scared, so she quickly apologized for bothering Croel, explaining that she wanted to help because she was always the one getting washed. Croel happily reassured her that it wasn't a bother at all. She then shared that for cute little girls like Renee to help with cleaning someone's body was very special. In fact, It was so special that there were people who would pay money for that service. Hearing the mention of money, Renee started thinking that perhaps if she earned money, she wouldn't be a bother to anyone anymore. So the next day in the research room, Renee asked Huru if he could earn money by washing the bodies of everyone in the castle. Hearing it, Huru got shocked and started searching for Croel in anger. He began shouting, demanding to know where she was. Seeing the anger on Huru's face, Croel became scared, realizing the severity of the situation. Meanwhile, Renee intervened, trying to stop Huru by pulling him towards herself. Many days passed, and in the next scene, Huru was reading books. Mari came there with lunch for him. Huru thanked her for the lunch and shared that he would eat it before it got cold. Renee was there as well, and greeted Mari with a cheerful, "Good afternoon." Mari, upon seeing Renee, became happy and hugged her, praising her cuteness and complimenting her attire. However, she suddenly noticed that Renee's dress had been changed. So Mari asked if Renee's outfit was different from the last time. Renee then shared about the past, explaining how Huru had been making so many outfits for her. Once she had eventually asked him to stop making new outfits, because she didn't feel entitled to wear all those dresses. Also, Renee mentioned that she really didn't mind wearing clothes. Huru then shared with Renee that the truth was, in the castle, the working attire of newcomers was examined carefully until the best one was chosen. This process was part of a set rule. Renee got confused hearing that. Huru reiterated that work clothes were something worn for a long day, so the careful selection process was for the health and efficiency of the people. The clothing of every individual in the castle was decided through trial and error until it was determined. Renee finally understood. Huru reiterated that as a helper of his, if his direct subordinate were to break the rules, he would lose face as the head. Renee then apologized for being selfish. Huru reassured Renee that as long as she understood, she didn't need to worry about the mere rules of the castle. With that, the story of the past concluded. The scene then shifted back to the present, where Mari shared that it was her first time hearing about that rule. Meanwhile, Huru was hiding his face behind his book. For closing the discussion, Huru stood up and asked Mari to bring the lunch. Mari promptly brought the lunch, sharing that it was an ample serving of macaroni over seafood. Renee was staring at the food intently. Mari cautioned her to be careful as the food might be hot. Seeing Renee's tense expression, Mari asked her what was wrong, so Renee asked if it was okay for her to eat all of that by herself. Mari questioned whether it was possible for Huru to help, suggesting that Huru was pushing Renee to eat. Huru responded with a yes, stating that ever since Renee arrived there, she had struggled to accept everything. The scene shifted to 2 weeks ago, where Renee was refusing to eat, but Huru was insisting, saying that it was necessary for her to eat. He asked Rizeru to hold Renee. Reluctantly, Rizeru complied and held Renee, apologizing in advance for what she had to do. Huru then attempted to feed Renee with a spoonful of food, but she wasn't willing to eat it. She believed that the food was high in nutrients and very expensive, and she felt that someone like her shouldn't be eating such luxurious food. Huru reassured her not to worry, mentioning that the food wasn't very expensive. He added that despite its affordability, the taste was perfect. Even with just a single mouthful, the amazing smell and the delicious flavor of the meat juice overflowed, while the cheese was sticky and tempting. He encouraged her to try it now, as it would be delicious. So somehow, Huru managed to get Renee to eat a spoonful of food. The scene then returned to the present, where Huru was reflecting on how difficult it was to feed her that food. Mari's thought was that childcare wasn't an easy road to walk. Huru praised Mari, mentioning that the lunch was very delicious. Mari thanked Huru for the praise. Then, after a moment of contemplation, Mari told Huru that she was sorry for bringing it up right after his meal, but there was something she would like to discuss with him. Huru responded with a yes, acknowledging Mari's concerns as they seemed to be deeply rooted. Mari then shared that it was about Mina, expressing her observation that since he hadn't been relying on her for their defense, it appeared that Mina was feeling depressed about being useless. Mari also mentioned that although Mina might seem a bit rough, she was actually very sensible inside. Mari then asked if Huru would consider entrusting Mina with some more work if possible. Huru responded that he understood the situation. He began to ponder that he had been chipping away at his subordinates' confidence by taking on enemies he believed they couldn't handle themselves. He realized that while he thought he was protecting them from harm, he had actually ended up hurting Mina. So, trusting his subordinates was also a task for him as their master. Huru stated that he would talk with Mina about it. Mari, upon hearing this, became very happy. Huru then started thinking that the enemies of the castle were indeed very strong, and in order to provide training to Mina, he would have to assess her combat skills first. However, he found it hard to imagine that Mina would talk about her problems with him. Huru interpreted that Mari must have picked up on Mina's feelings because Mari was good at reading people. Mari then asked with a peculiar expression if there was one more thing she wanted to know. Whether her working attire had yet to be determined. Hearing this, Huru tensed up, realizing that Mari's ability to read people was indeed accurate. The next day, Mari was showing her newly determined dress to Renee. Outfits was Huru's passion, and even once on Halloween, Huru was very angry about Renee's new dress designed by the Skeleton Squad. Everyone tried to calm him down, stating that it was just a normal dress and Renee wasn't really injured. However, Huru was so furious that he wasn't ready to listen to them. More days passed like that. One day, Renee and Huru were reading books in the research room. Renee kept glancing at the same page repeatedly. Huru finally asked her if she didn't understand something, because she had been staring at that one page for a while. Renee responded with a no, explaining that it wasn't that she didn't understand. She was simply captivated by the beautiful paintings in the book and wondered how they were created. Hearing this, Huru asked if Renee had ever tried painting before. Renee shared that she had scribbled on the chalkboard when she was learning the alphabet. Huru then suggested that they both try painting together, and he would teach her how to paint. Renee was shocked to hear this. Huru pondered what they should draw, but Renee objected, finding the idea of learning to draw ridiculous. Meanwhile, Huru searched for a good scene to paint. Suddenly he noticed Renee and decided to use her as his painting subject. He then dressed Renee in different clothes. Curious, Renee asked the reason for the sudden change in attire. In response, Huru instructed her to sit down on a wooden block and don't move. Nearby, a skeleton held up a mirror to shine sunlight onto Renee, illuminating her for the painting. Huru began sketching, directing Croel and Rizuru to provide him with painting supplies. He also asked them to toss some flowers into the air to add to the scene's beauty. Renee was amazed by the scene unfolding before her. Huru began painting, confident that it would turn out beautifully. Renee looked at Huru with a puzzled expression, but he asked her to stay still. Maid, seeing Huru's unusual behavior, wondered why suddenly started painting if he never does this before. However, he never finds an answer for this question. The scene then shifted to some time later, where Croel was stunned to see a surprising sight in front of her. All the skeleton guards were playing with flowers together with Renee, creating a heartwarming scene that left Croel amazed. Bondes skillfully crafted a beautiful flower garland for Renee. When he showed it to the others, everyone praised him for his work. Bondes then presented the garland to Renee as a gift, to which Renee thanked him with a grateful smile. Other skeletons were also crafting various creations with flowers and presenting them to Renee as gifts. Suddenly, Renee spotted a butterfly and remarked that she hadn't expected to see one at the castle. Bondes invited Renee to come closer for a better look at the butterfly. As they moved closer, Croel arrived on the scene. Bondes asked Croel if she also wanted to join in making floral decorations. But instead, Croel furiously asked why they were all playing with a bunch of flowers. Bondes responded by explaining that since Lord Huru had gone to collect materials for the new Maid uniforms, he had asked them to keep Renee company in the meantime. That's why they were all making floral decorations. Croel furiously clarified that she didn't mean why they were keeping Renee company, but rather why they were playing with flowers. She wondered if there were better things to play with, like cards or tabletop games. Bondes looked saddened and shared that they had actually started with a card game. Then, he recounted what happened during that time. Towards the end of the game, only he and Renee were left. Bondes had to choose a card, and everyone was cheering him on, urging him to make his selection. However, Renee looked very tense and serious, which made Bondes nervous about which card to choose. When Bondes attempted to take the chosen card, he found that Renee was holding onto it tightly. Thinking that Renee might be losing because of that particular card, he pretended as if he couldn't retrieve it and opted to choose another card instead. There, Bondes thought that Renee was acting childish, but the reality was quite different. After choosing the other card, Bondes won the game. Confused, he asked Renee why she had done that. Renee was very happy despite losing the game, as her intention was to make Bondes win, which brought her joy. In the present moment, Bondes felt deep sadness as his heart ached every time he defeated Renee in a game. He never imagined that a simple card game could be so distressing, and he never wanted to see Renee smile like that again. Hearing Bondes' confession, Croel also felt tense and remarked that perhaps flower decoration wasn't such a bad idea after all. The next day in the research room, Huru was with Renee, ready to continue their painting lessons. He emphasized to Renee the importance of being able to draw well, explaining that it could lead to new job opportunities. Huduru encouraged Renee to study hard and put in the effort to improve her skills. Renee responded that she understood and would rely on him for guidance. Huduru then expressed his desire to assess her current painting skills before starting the lessons. He asked Renee to draw a still life painting of fruits, suggesting that it would be better to begin with still pictures. After some time, Renee completed her painting and informed Huduru that she had finished. As Huduru approached to inspect it, Renee sadly apologized for what she perceived as a waste of canvas due to her terrible drawing. She expressed doubt in her abilities, saying that she wasn't meant for drawing. But Huduru denied her thoughts, stating that in his eyes, her painting was magnificent. He admired the bold construction, unconfined by stiff rules, and praised the exquisite coloring that brought originality to her depiction of an apple. Huduru assured Renee that he could sing praises for her painting all day. Renee asked in confusion if Huduru was truly saying that. Without a word, Huduru took the canvas and returned with it beautifully framed. Renee was slightly shocked to see this, but her surprise grew when Huduru hung the painting on the wall. This left Renee in complete shock. He showed the painting to everyone, and they all began praising Renee for her masterpiece. Overwhelmed by the attention, Renee became scared and hid behind the curtains. The maids tried to calm her down, assuring her that they had removed the painting from the wall, so she didn't need to worry about it. Rizeru requested Huduru to show some remorse for frightening Renee. Reluctantly, Huduru asked for forgiveness. Still, this masterpiece was perfect no matter which way you looked at it. In the next scene, Rizeru provided information from the report. She mentioned that the operations of the defense, laundry, cleaning, and medical corps teams had been running smoothly without any issues. However, Mari had requested to replenish their food reserves, particularly seafood, as it needed restocking. Huduru initially considered assigning the task to Bondes and his army, but later he decided to handle it himself. Rizeru confirmed whether he was truly going to do the job alone, to which Huduru responded with a firm yes. The scene shifted to the riverside where Renee was also present. Huduru explained to her that they were there to secure their food supply for the castle. He suggested that both of them catch some fish to bring back to the castle. Huduru then asked Renee if she had any fishing experience. Renee responded affirmatively, recalling how her father had taught her to fish a long time ago. She explained that when she was alone, she would often fish to feed herself, making it a regular practice. Huduru felt relieved that he didn't need to teach her how to fish, so he asked Renee to begin. He mentioned that there were rumors of a gigantic fish inhabiting the lake, which made it a relief for other fish if they were to catch it. 1 hour passed and she caught nothing, absolutely nothing. She tried hard, making one cast after another, but nothing worked. So Renee became sad and started to tremble slightly. Seeing her reaction, Huduru reassured her and decided to handle the fishing himself, but a little bit later. And another hour passed, but Renee was still seen holding the fishing rod, looking very sad. Seeing Renee's continued attempts without success, Huduru had been observing her for quite some time. He encouraged her not to rush, explaining that enjoying the time spent fishing was part of its charm. He reassured her that they still had some stock left in case they didn't catch anything. Renee remained sad because she wanted to catch a bunch of fish and share it with everyone who had been taking care of her. Hearing her sentiment, Huduru realized he had no other choice but to do something. He asked Renee to stay back for a moment and then began to use his magic. Huduru raised his hand to create a powerful spell, but before casting it, he asked Renee to cover her ears once again, and of course she agreed. Suddenly, a big blast occurred in the river, leaving Renee stunned. After the blast, numerous fish floated on the river's surface. Seeing the abundance of fish, Renee was amazed. Huduru explained that with so many fish, they wouldn't have to worry about not having enough. Instead of catching fish, now they just needed to haul them in. Suddenly they heard a voice from the river, and a big fish emerged out of nowhere. Renee got scared, but Huduru remained calm. He remarked that it seemed luck was in their favor, and today's going to be a big catch. Huduru once again used his magic on the fish, and in a matter of seconds, it froze solid. Renee confirmed in amazement whether the fish really froze in an instant. Huduru laughed and shared that they might be having a fish feast for dinner, and everyone would surely be overjoyed. Upon reaching the castle, Bondes was busy carrying the frozen fishes, while inside, Renee was sharing the events that had transpired with her and Huduru. She explained what Huduru had done at the river. Hearing this, Rizeru wondered whether they had really gone on a fishing trip. The next day, Mari came to the research room and announced that she wanted to appoint herself as Renee's personal instructor. Curious, Huduru asked her the reason for suddenly considering this decision. Mari responded that she had been considering it for a while, She explained that while Renee was hardworking, she was still a child and needed to learn about common sense and how to navigate interactions with others in their world. Huru agreed with Mari's assessment. Suddenly, Mari became serious and expressed concern that with Renee always spending time with him, she would barely have the chance to experience a normal life with regular people. Mari also shared her belief that they should have the opportunity to communicate with Renee. Huru asked for clarification on what she meant by all that. Mari explained that it might be the result of their long-lasting solitary lifestyle, but they had somewhat become out of touch with the real world. In the current situation, Mari was worried that Renee might not learn about many things that should be common sense. Huru shared that he didn't quite see things the same way as Mari did, but Mari remained resolute in her thoughts. Mari began recounting instances when Huru taught Renee how to cook, mentioning that there were quite a few unconventional methods he had suggested. She cited an example where he instructed them to cook without any heat or knives during their last cooking session. In that situation, Mari could only teach Renee how to arrange a salad. Huru acted as if he were shocked, then proceeded to demonstrate by cutting with his hands and cooking with his palms. He then asked Mari if they could prepare food in a similar manner, emphasizing how easy it was. Huru asked for Mari's thoughts on the matter, suggesting that even without heat and knives, they could still prepare food. Mari became furious and shouted that it wasn't possible. She argued that people couldn't cut meat with their hands or grill it with their palms, and the most they could do with their hands was garnishing. There, Renee began practicing cutting meat with her hands, but Mari quickly intervened, telling her to stop and not to ruin the meat. Mari then shouted in frustration, expressing her belief that Huru wasn't a good teacher. Suddenly, out of nowhere, Eru came up behind Mari and placed his hands on her shoulders, startling her. Eru then asked her to clarify what she was saying, as she had just heard that Lord Huru was not suited as a teacher. Mari was shivering from Eru's intense gaze, and she stammered as she tried to respond to her. Eru then reminded Mari of her teachings, urging her not to discredit her master. She pleaded with Mari not to trouble Lord Huru any further. Just then, a howl echoed from the castle, interrupting the tense moment. A few days later, Mina was walking in the corridor, enjoying the peacefulness of nature. Suddenly, she saw Renee coming towards her. Mina asked Renee if she was going out somewhere. Renee responded affirmatively, mentioning that Huru had some errands to run. Mina understood what Renee meant, but she questioned whether her clothes were too light for the weather, as it was quite cold outside. Renee shared that she would probably be fine as she had received something from Huru. Mina asked about the item, prompting Renee to explain that it was a stone imbued with magic. This stone possessed a spell that protected the person who carried it, ensuring they would be fine whether it was cold or hot outside. Mina was stunned by this revelation, as she had no idea that such a convenient stone existed. She then asked Renee if it didn't look like a jewel, and speculated that it might be very expensive. Renee responded that she also thought so, and wasn't ready to accept it. She was about to say more. But before she could, Huru arrived and interrupted their conversation, stating that the stone wasn't valuable enough to be considered a jewel. Huru explained that the stone was a mineral that was quite common where he used to live a long time ago. He mentioned that there were many interesting things they could make with them once infused with some magic, but assured them that they were just plain stones originally. Huru suddenly remembered something and told Mina that he wanted to talk about something with her. He asked if she could make some time for him after their return. Mina responded affirmatively, saying yes. Huru was satisfied with Mina's response and then asked Renee to go as it was time to head out. Renee bid farewell to Mina with a goodbye. Mina responded, wishing Renee to take care of herself, and then began to ponder why Huru wanted to talk with her. Mina wondered if there was something serious that Huru wanted to discuss with her, as he appeared very serious about it. Her thoughts drifted back to the stone, and she considered asking Huru for one for herself. Out of nowhere, Rizeru arrived and informed Mina that what she was thinking of asking Huru wasn't possible. Mina was startled by Rizeru's sudden appearance. Rizeru then showed Mina a book that she could read instead. Rizeru then pointed to a figure of a stone in the book and asked if it was the same as the one Renee had. Intrigued, Mina asked Rizeru for the book so she could take a closer look at the gem. Rizeru explained that the stone was said to be a legendary gem, only found in dragon territory. It was an extremely rare product formed from prolonged exposure to a mighty dragon's magical aura. In addition to its utmost rarity, the difficulty in obtaining it, and its practical value, drove its price to billions. Hearing the word billions, Mina was completely shocked, and began to wonder if Huru had really gifted a billionaire's gem just to protect Renee. Mina started to ask Rizeru if it was possible that Lord Huru was... But before she could finish her question, Rizeru interrupted her and asked her to be quiet. One day, Renee sat alone, lost in thought about herself and others. She reflected on the time that had passed since she first arrived at the castle of the Demon King's army. Although many things confused her, Renee felt like she had somewhat gotten used to living in the castle. However, she couldn't shake off the question of why a hero like her was allowed to stay alive and why she was being treated with such kindness. The uncertainty weighed heavily on her mind. She pondered that surely there must be a reason or something they were after her. Suddenly, Huru arrived and greeted her with a good morning. Renee greeted him back with a morning nod. Renee resumed wondering about the reason for her being left alive. Huru then mentioned that it was raining outside the castle. It's one of Mother Nature's blessings. However, he noted that Eru and the others might be upset as their laundry duty was thwarted by the rain. Renee responded with a question, asking if it was really like that. She then began to stare at the sky, looking sad. Huru, noticing her expression, asked if she disliked the rain. Renee explained that rainy days were very cold to train on, and it was hard to find food. She added that she just didn't have many good memories of rainy days. Huru moved the curtain aside and asked Renee if she really thought so. He then began to use his magic and threw something into the sky. To her surprise, the clouds above the castle scattered, and the area around the castle bathed in sunshine, transforming the nature within its reach into a sunny haven. Upon witnessing the clouds clearing up in the sudden sunny sky, Renee was stunned. As the brightness enveloped the surroundings within a minute, Huru remarked that sunny days were indeed the best. After witnessing Huru's kindness, Renee began to ponder why he was being so kind towards her, considering that he and his army were supposed to be sworn enemies of mankind. She wondered if it was because she was the hero, but if that were the case, she doubted she could live up to Huru's expectations. She also wondered what she could possibly do, feeling helpless as she realized she knew nothing about the kingdom or military affairs. Sent out with nothing but her sword and armor, she regretted ever becoming a hero in the first place. Huru then asked Renee to return to their respective rooms. As she walked, Renee couldn't shake the desire to know more. Yet she was afraid to ask, fearing the inevitable disappointment that might follow. She pondered what she could do to assist Huru and his troops, contemplating how she could repay the kindness he had shown her. She questioned what merit Huru saw in treating her so kindly, feeling utterly clueless about it all.